The first Feminist Frequency video I ever watched was called Caprica and the Queerness of Sam, but much to my surprise, she had an incredibly negative view of the character.
Caprica is a new show on the Sci-Fi Network that is actually set 58 years before the events of the reimagined Battlestar Galactica. As I watched the second episode, I noticed something said that was so subtle I almost missed it.
Used to hang out here with your dad. All the Toron kids came here. I'd be hopelessly trying to flirt with some guy. Meanwhile, your dad would get a date with the sister.
Did you catch that? Because that man just said he was gay. And it wasn't a big production, it wasn't a big coming out story, it wasn't set in big flashy lights, it was so normalized that I didn't even notice at first. I actually had to go back and listen to it again because I was like, oh, it just was in passing. How it should be. That man's name is Sam Adama and he's part of the main cast on Caprica. It's also really nice to see that he's not stereotypically gay like we often see in queer representations on TV. Gay men are often flamboyant and obsessed with fashion. You might recognize these men. But there is one teeny little problem. Sam Adama is a murderer. He's actually a hired hitman that's a part of a gang. He also isn't your average killer in that, you know, he doesn't dress in black and kill someone with a silencer quietly and then sneak back out of the house like we've come to see on television and movies. No, he chooses to use two very large, very phallic knives to slash open his victims in a grotesque and gruesome way. Hollywood has a long history of making queer characters monsters and sociopaths and murderers who have no moral compass. This trope is used in order to reinforce a fear of homosexuality. So do you see the problem here? On one hand, you have this awesome representation of a queer character who's totally normalized in being queer. It's not even an issue, it's totally accepted in society, and he's not stereotypical in that way. On the other hand, he's kind of crazy and he's a murderer. Just when I want to celebrate a genuine accomplishment of Hollywood, they have to go make the queer man disturbingly evil.
First, since Anita is so fond of tropes, I should note here that TV Tropes lists Sam as a gangster, spelled with a Y. A gangster is a gay member of the mafia. Typically, the gangster is completely closeted because in the real mafia, people have been murdered for being gay or suspected of being gay. But this is not the case in Caprica. As TV Tropes notes, Sam Adama from Caprica, a hitman in the Toron Mafia, he talks to his nephew William about the days in the old neighborhood where he kept striking out with the guys while his brother Joseph got all the girls. There's a subversion in the sense that the 12 colonies have no discrimination or stereotyping against homosexuals and bisexuals, and never have, so the fact that he's gay is completely non-significant. The word does not even exist. Sam also wears a wedding ring as he is happily married to Larry. I find this depiction of Sam Adama as disturbingly evil to be a bit of an overstatement. I wonder exactly how many episodes of the show Anita watched before she passed judgment on this character. Looking at the series as a whole, Sam is not depicted as evil in any simplistic sense. She mentions that he was in a gang, but she does not mention that his affiliation with the gang is linked to his backstory and his cultural heritage. In the show, Sam Adama was an orphan refugee from the planet Toron, who fled a civil war on his planet after his parents were murdered. His gang affiliation is deeply rooted with his cultural heritage and backstory. Sam is immensely loyal to the gang, in part because they are responsible for rescuing him and his brother and supporting them as refugees on a foreign planet. He did not wake up one day and decide to join a gang so he could go around killing people. He kills when ordered to, and he does so out of affiliation and loyalty. He is not presented as a character that loves violence for violence sake. His actions have a context which Anita is ignoring in order to rush to call him evil. Moreover, the weapons that he kills with are part of his cultural heritage and not chosen for their phallic resemblance. It's important to understand that the gang itself is integral to the overall story arc of the show. These things suggest that the decision to make Sam a member of the Halatha crime syndicate was not an arbitrary one, and was certainly not done with the express purpose of making people afraid of gay people. The mobster element of the show also ties into the film noir element of the show. In the very next episode of the show, after which Feminist Frequency referred to, Sam is shown to be happily married to a man. In the scene, his young nephew asks the two men if they will ever adopt a child. This scene amounts to essentially the sum of all fears of the anti-gay marriage crowd. Not only is a child openly acknowledging and accepting homosexuality, but he believes that the partners should adopt. This scene spits in the face of the people who try to use the "think of the children" as an excuse to stop the public acceptance of gay marriage. Lastly, I want to return to this clip.
Hollywood has a long history of making queer characters monsters and sociopaths and murderers who have no moral compass. This trope is used in order to reinforce a fear of homosexuality.
This statement is a typical conclusion statement of a feminist frequency video. Towards the end of this series, I will discuss her typical pattern of talking about tropes in a video I am calling the philosophy of tropes. In brief, you run the risk of falling into certain problems when you examine things as a group, such as a trope. For one thing, you run the risk of committing the fallacy of composition, which is when something said of the group does not hold true for every member of the group. For another, you're typically dealing with a multiplicity of intentions when it comes to stories, so statements like,
"This trope is used,"
are rather dubious, not just in this case, but in just about any case. It doesn't matter whether you're saying that this trope is used to reinforce fear of homosexuality, or this trope is used to increase appreciation for puppies. This statement reduces multiple stories written by different writers with multiple and varying intentions down to a singular, and in this case, sinister intention. This is a neat and tidy way to look at tropes, but the problem is that reality is not so neat and tidy. In this particular case, I think that her heart is in the right place, but that she is overreaching. Examined in context, Sam is no more evil than the typical TV mobster, and that is something that the audience will grasp as part of their cultural understanding and relationship to the television show. The fact that he's gay actually challenges traditional views of masculinity. That might not be the most enlightened and progressive depiction, but the weight of the evidence does not support the claim that the writers intend to reinforce fear of homosexuality. The fact that it in some way might is a matter of interpretation on the part of the audience, which I will also discuss in my Philosophy of Tropes video. I will end this video with some comments on the likability of Caprica's characters. Rich industrialist asshole, poor story arc, poor story arc, poor story arc, religious zealot, preachy religious zealot, bastard religious zealot, Sam. Sam's pretty cool once you get past the whole hitman thing.
Very large, very phallic.